Hi guys, it's Brandon with Your Right Website, back with another video. You guys seem to really like my last video about Sage 10, so I figured I'd do another one. Sorry it's been a while since I did the last one. But one of you actually suggested that I do a video all about using Blade with WordPress, so that's what this video is going to be about. Today we're going to take a look at what is Blade. We're going to take a look at some of the basic syntax of Blade. And then we're going to look at how to use Blade with WordPress and WordPress templates. We're going to look at how to pass data to your Blade template using a composer in Sage 10. And then lastly, I'm going to show you how you can actually load the Blade provided by Sage 10 in another location, such as a custom plugin or somewhere else in your theme that it doesn't load by default. So I'm going to put something up on the screen here with the timestamps for each of the topics that I'm going to talk over, so you can skip around as you need to, but let's jump right in and start talking about Blade. So, what is Blade? Blade is a templating language that allows you to run PHP in line with your HTML without having to have a whole bunch of ugly PHP syntax in there. It's basically so you can have your HTML and your PHP all in one file and you don't feel like you're breaking in and out of your HTML by having PHP includes all over the place. It's a nice, friendly way to build the markup for your templates. And Blade originally came from Laravel, but is a part of the Sage 10 template language as well. And there are going to be some differences between Blade used in Laravel and Sage 10, but for the most part, the syntax is going to be the same. And I'm going to go over how to do the important things that I find myself doing a lot in WordPress with Blade. So switching back over to WordPress, we are in the Hanover Renovations demo site that I built a while ago. And this is a site running Sage 10 that has Blade as its template engine. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the basic syntax of Blade. But in order to do that, we need to create a new Blade template for our site. So the first way we're going to do that is by going into our site, and we're going to find the Resources Views folder, and we have all of our template files here for WordPress. So I'm going to just go ahead and create a new one for this demo, template blade demo.blade.php. And now we have a new template in WordPress. It's not going to let us actually use this template in WordPress just yet because we need to define the template. And this is similar to how you do it in WordPress, but the syntax is just a little bit different. So we're going to take this template full width, no header padded, which is another template that I have, and we're just going to copy this guy. And we're going to paste this in, and we're just going to name the template name Blade Demo Template. And we're going to save that. And then if we go back to WordPress and refresh this Blade demo page, it will load. And then we can go to template here, and we can just choose the Blade demo template. So let's go ahead and save that and view our page. And you can see right now there's nothing on the page because this template doesn't load a header and there's no content for the template. But if we were to go in here and we were to put some content, you will see that if we refresh, there's the content. So it's a little bit ugly because this template's meant to be a full width template. So we will add a container. And if we do that, we can refresh, and now the content is centered. So we're not really worried about the way things look in this video, but we're just trying to get the basic Blade syntax out of the way. Okay, so let's take a look at the template that we created, and we can start to already see that it looks a little bit different than a standard WordPress template. So you can see in the template that we have the name of the template here, and it's in this funky double bracket, double dash syntax, and that is the Blade comment syntax. So that's the equivalent of the PHP comment. It's just a little bit different in Blade. And then if we take a look at the rest of this template, I'm actually going to go over the template in a little bit more detail a little bit later. First, we're going to start by just playing with some of the basic Blade syntax. So the first thing we need to know how to do is just actually work with raw PHP, because there are going to be some things you can't do in Blade, and you're going to need to go back to PHP land to do. So say we wanted to create a new array of data. We could go at PHP and then at end PHP, and this opens a new PHP code block. So we are going to make it a new array. And we're just going to make an array of fruits. And now we have some PHP data. You know, you can do anything that you can do in normal PHP inside of the PHP and NPHP. It's important to note that there's also two different versions of this PHP syntax, and they don't necessarily play nice with each other. There's this version which has the at PHP and the at end PHP, and your data goes in the middle. And there's also a shorthand where you can do at PHP and then a open and closing bracket and put your data inside. Now, these are both valid syntaxes, but they don't necessarily play nice with each other. Like if we go and we reload this page, we're going to get a weird error. And the weird error is because we're using both of these syntaxes in the same file. So if I remove, say I remove one of them and refresh, it's going to load. And if I remove the other one, you can see that even though we removed the other shorthand PHP, it's still broken. And at first glance, you might be wondering, why isn't it working? We removed it. Well, we have this other shorthand PHP up here as a part of the WordPress loop, and that's actually what's breaking it. So let's go ahead and actually create a new Blade file where we're going to put this PHP code. And we can do that with an include statement. So this is going to be similar to how you include files just with PHP. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to our partials directory, which is a good place to store things. I'll put this in, let's make a new folder, call it demo. And we'll make a new Blade file. We'll call it blade demo.blade.php. And then what we're going to do here is we're just going to copy this code, paste it in here, and then we want to go ahead and include that file. So now we're going to go ahead and do an includes to include that other Blade file. So to do that, you're just going to do at include, and then we're going to put the name of the Blade file. But we also need to put the correct folder path. So in this case, Blade is always looking at the root of the folder, so views. So we want to include from the root of that folder. So it's in the partials directory, and then it's in the demo directory, and then it's Blade demo. So you'll see that we are putting the folder name, and then a dot, and then the other folder name, and then a dot, and then the file name. And we're not including the .blade.php, which is necessary for all Blade files. And Sage is smart enough to know that if there's a file with .blade.php, it's a Blade file, and it's smart enough to know the difference between a file and a directory. So if we go back to our demo file, I'm just going to put something. This is our demo file. And then if we reload, now you'll see that our demo file is loading. Of course, the content is messed up a little bit. So what we'll actually do is we'll include this demo file inside of our container instead. And that way our content will display a little nicer. So now that we've included that file. Now we can actually play with some of the syntax a little bit. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is how do you output data to your Blade template, like something dynamic. So we're going to take a look and go back to our template. And instead of this array here, we're going to go ahead and put an image. And this is going to be the path to an image. So let's go into our WordPress media library and grab any image. So we're going to go ahead and we'll just grab her, copy the URL. And then we're going to go ahead and paste that in as a variable. I know this is probably not a realistic use case, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to make an image src equals, and then like this. And then to output our content, there's two different ways to output HTML in Blade. The first is the safe way, which should be used for anything that's untrusted or anything where you don't want HTML content. And the way that you do that is through the double curly brackets like this. So I can do image src equals image and save that. And if I refresh my demo page, we should see our nice image, which loads really big, but it's loading. So we've got our image, and the double bracket syntax should be used for anything where you don't trust the output, like stuff coming from users or stuff where HTML, like having HTML in the src of an image would break things pretty bad, probably. What we can do to actually demonstrate this a little bit further is we can make some HTML. HTML, H1, this is a test, H1, and then paragraph, content. So now we have a header and we have a paragraph that should have some bold content. So if we go ahead and we output that with these brackets, HTML, what you're going to see is you're going to see that that's content displays, but it has all the tags stripped out of it or made safe. They're actually not stripped out. They are made safe so that you can't have something like a script tag or something like that put in there. So this is not actually rendering as HTML. Now, if we did want to render it as HTML, what we can do is we can just change this from the double brackets to single bracket, exclamation, 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 and then put the content in the middle. If we save that, you'll see that we now get it rendered out as HTML. And this is good if you're taking content like from advanced custom fields or something where you know that the content is trusted because it's being entered by an admin user or somebody who should have the ability to put in HTML. So the big difference between the double bracket and the single bracket double exclamation point is whether or not it's going to output HTML. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over how to do an if statement in Blade. So to do an if statement, you're just going to do @if, and then your conditional. So we're going to check the data array to see if there's an apple in there. So if in array apple data end if. So this the end if ends the if check, and then we just have our success criteria in here. There is an apple. And then if we save that and refresh the page, we see there is an apple. So we are now checking successfully if there's an apple. If we wanted to add an else condition to this if statement, you can do that simply by adding an else statement. And then put your sentence for if there's no apple. there is no apple. And then we will go ahead and remove our apple from the array and save that. And if we refresh, you can see there is no apple. So that is how you do an if-else. Now, if you wanted to do an if-else, you can do that as well. And you would just do that like this. If at else, if in array banana data, we could do our sentence, there is no apple, but here is a banana. And we could just save that, and then we will reload our page, and you'll see there is no apple, but there is a banana. And that is how you do an if-else in Blade. Now we're going to take a look at how to do a for each loop in Blade. And to do a for each loop is very simple. We're just going to do at for each data as data item. And then we're going to end the for each, and then we will just output each data item like so. If we save that, we should have all of our items displayed here on the screen. And you can see we have our two, we have our banana and our strawberry being output by the for each loop. So with that, those are the basics, the absolute basics of working with the Blade template language. I will include a link in the description to the Laravel documentation for working with Blade. There's a lot more things that you can do in Blade, like you can do switch statements. There's other forms of loops that you can do. You can do a for loop. You can do for each, for else. You can do while loops. I find with the data that I work with the most, I'm usually just doing for each loops, but there are cases where the other types of loops come in handy as well. Looking at the syntax here, the loop variable, this is kind of cool, is there's a variable you can use to determine if you are in the first item of the loop or the last item of the loop. So for instance, we can actually go back here and do if loop first, else, and then end if. So if we're in the first item of the loop, we want to do something a little different. We'll put it in a h1 tag, and then just put our data item in there. So if we reload our page, go back here, you'll see our first item is now in an h1 tag. And that is through the use of this loop variable. So that's another thing that you can use that sometimes comes in handy. Looking back at the Blade syntax here, there's a lot of different properties you can actually use that loop variable for. So there's a index variable. That's actually kind of cool too, because you can do something like this. And this will get you the index, which is the PHP index, so it's going to start at 0. And if we refresh our page, you'll see that it goes 0, 1. So that's kind of helpful. There's also an iteration, I can't say that word, iteration, that'll start at 1. And there's all these different little helpers that you can do with the loop. So you could do they have even and odd, which is really helpful, like if you're doing something in Tailwind and you want to include a different class on a table or something like that. So there's a lot of cool, powerful things that you could add to a loop. I'm not going to go over every single one of them, but the docs are there, and it's just good to know about these things. And then looking at the rest of the Blade documentation, there's a lot of different items in here. Some of these don't apply in Sage. Some of these are more Laravel type things, at least in my experience. I haven't had to use them. But I would recommend, if you're new to Blade and you haven't used Blade at all, look at these Blade directives here, because these are going to be all the things that work inside of Sage 10. Components and things like this are more, I believe, are going to be more Laravel. At least I haven't had to dig into these really with Sage 10. But definitely the Blade directives are going to be important if you are working with data in Sage 10. So now let's talk about the differences between a standard WordPress install and one that's using Sage 10 where you have access to Blade. So you saw a little bit earlier that we had this Blade template here, and I went just a tiny bit over things. Like I went over the comment syntax here, which is the double bracket, double dash. But I didn't go over the rest of this. And I didn't go over how to work with templates in WordPress. So let's take a look at this and see what's going on here. So we've got our template, and this is the template name that we added. And this is the same as in stock WordPress where you would put your template name. It's just using the Blade comment syntax instead of the PHP comment syntax. And then we've got this extends layout.app, and we're going to come back to that in a moment because that's really important. But first, we're going to take a look at this section here, which is our content. And in our templates, this content section is actually going to correspond with our layout, so we will come back to that later as well. But this while loop, this is the WordPress loop. So it's just been rewritten in a different format using the Blade syntax. So this is inside of the WordPress loop. And then in this template, we have include first, which I believe this directive is going to allow you to specify a hierarchy of templates. So it's going to include the first one that you specify here. So in this case, it's looking, is there another Blade file called partials.contentPage? And if there's not one, it's going to fall back to partials.content. And then we have just our include directive, which we took a look at earlier in the video. So by default, these templates are going to be in your views folder. And then just kind of at the root is where all of your templates are. And you can see in this Sage 10 theme that we've got our templates, and all of them have this .blade.php, not syntax, but file extension. And that file extension is telling Sage, this is a Blade file, so you can use the Blade syntax in there. And this works with the exact same WordPress template hierarchy as without Blade. So you've got a home.blade.php for your blog. You've got, frontpage.php for the front page of your site. You've got page.blade.php, and you can create a new template file for any standard WordPress template that you wanted to add. You would just want to add the .blade.php file extension at the end, and it works with the exact same WordPress template hierarchy. Now, what's different is where I said, let's take a look at this layouts.app and this content. So if we come up here to the views and the layouts folder, there's this app.blade.php. And this is a layout. So the layout replaces the WordPress get the header and get the footer calls that you have to put in each of your traditional templates to show your header and footer code. In Sage, you have a layout, and the layout actually wraps the content of your template. So if we take a look at this, you can see that in our layout, we have both the header and the footer in here. We have our head, we have our body, and our closing body. So how does this all work? Well, we have our template file, and that's extending the layouts.app file. And you can have multiple layouts. So if we wanted to have a different layout that looked completely different, we could go in here and go new file, app2.blade.php, and just have a second one. You can name it whatever, and you would just extend the other file inside of your template file. Now, this content here is being loaded in our template file here through this yield. So the yield statement basically means go somewhere else. I'm going to yield to this other file to get my content. So you can see we've got our template file, and then we're yielding to get the content from the other file, which is this template blade demo.blade.php. So basically, the flow of it, if you can follow along, this is a little bit tricky, but WordPress loads this template blade demo.blade.php file because you've assigned it to a page in WordPress. Now, when this file gets loaded, it sees that, oh, it extends layouts.app. So it's going to go and it's going to load your app.blade.php file to get the header and footer of your site. It's going to run through, it's going to go through all this, and then it's going to see, oh, yield content. So when it hits this yield content, it's going to go back to this template blade demo.blade.php file, and it's going to find the content section that's here. And then it'll run whatever code you have inside of that section. Once that code has finished running, it'll go back to the template file, it'll keep going, and then you can see we're actually checking, is there a sidebar in this case? I don't believe this theme has a sidebar, but it's going to continue to run down the rest of this file. And if you have another yield, like you could have in this template file, I believe you could actually have a second section with some other, like you could have another section called footer or whatever, and you could have that added to your template here. This template, I'm just using content. I find it easier to just have one. And then for things like the footer, I'm doing an include, and I'm including the footer from the section, and it's just running, but we hit our yield, it runs the stuff from our template file, comes back to the layout file, runs the rest, and then finishes the execution. So the layout file and the template file kind of work together. The template file loads the layout file executes until it's told to yield back to the template file. Then the code in the template file executes, and then execution goes back to the layout file to finish. And what's really cool about this is you no longer have to have separate header and footer files in like you do with stock WordPress. You have one file that manages your header and your footer, and you're just yielding to your content, which is your template or whatever other blade files you're loading. Like this template, you have your template in here, and we're loading our partial for the page, and then we're loading our partial for our content. So you have your template file, and that can call other blade files, and they'll all run, and then it'll yield back to the layout file to finish execution. So that is a big difference between stock WordPress and Sage 10, and the way it works in Sage 10 is really kind of elegant and works well and makes managing your site header and footer especially really easy, because you can just throw all that inside of your app.blade.php or whatever layout file you're using and just include them as partials and include them site-wide, and it really makes things easy. So now that we've talked about templates, let's talk about composers. So first off, what's a composer? Well, it's different than the composer package manager for PHP. In Sage 10, a composer is a way to pass data to one or more blade templates. So this, what we're doing right here, where we've got our PHP at data and then our array, yeah, you don't want to include PHP syntax inside of your blade files if you can help it. What you want to do is get that data ahead of time and then pass it to your blade template for rendering. So to do that, we're going to take a look at our composers. And those are located under the app directory here. And if we go view, there's a composers folder. And these are all the different composers for the site. So let's take a look at just one of them here. Take a look at app. So app here is a composer that's loading throughout the entire site. So let's take a look at how these are structured. So the first thing you're going to have is we have our class. This one's class app, and it extends composer. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to list all of the views that get data from this composer. So you can see we have this protected static views, and in this case, we just have star, which means all blade views are going to get data from this composer. Now, that's good if you're doing something simple. Like this one is just doing get the site name. So, that's something you want available anywhere you're doing operations with blade. Now, if you're doing something like fetching data from a database table, where it might take a while to run a query, yeah, you don't want to run that on every single blade file that you have. So you need to kind of think, do I really want to include everything, or do I want to include one file, or do I want to include several files? And you can do all of those. But let's take a look. We have this static views, and right now this one's, just adding data to every single blade file via this composer. And then we have this with method. And this is going to be what actually kicks things off. So you can see we have this return here with site name. So that's going to make a variable named site name available in every single blade file. And to illustrate that, we can actually go back to our blade demo, and we can just put a new header in here and call it site name and save that. And then if we refresh our page here, you will see we've got our site name, which is Hanover Renovations. And that data is available to me in no matter what blade file I'm using. And then if we go back to our app.php, you'll see this site name variable. It's getting the data for the site name method it's getting the data from this site name method down here. And this is just doing a get blog info to get the site name. But you can have multiple different functions in here to get different pieces of data and pass them back with their own variable names. So let's see if we've got one that we can look at that might be a little better. Yeah, this one's a little more meat on this one, which is the header for the site. You can see we are including only the header blade views, and you can actually do a wildcard. So in this case, I'm including anything that's in the sections folder that's a blade file that starts with header-star. So you can do a wildcard and include multiple blade files that way. And in this with method, you can see we're mostly just calling advanced custom fields here. So you don't have to have an associated function with each of these items. You can just directly call it if it's something simple like ACF. But if you want to do some more logic, like this has links and socials, we are doing a call, and it's calling this has links and socials function down here and just returning true or false. And you can make these more complicated. This is a pretty simple site because it's just a theme demo that I use for clients to take a look at what their website might look like. But you could make this as complicated as you need to, and this will execute as if you're in the WordPress loop. So you can do things like get the ID, or you can, do database queries. You are, it's acting as if you are on that page within the loop. So things, like I said, like get the ID and get the title, all of that stuff is going to work inside of these functions that you're passing to your blade view. So what we can actually do is we can just go ahead and create a new composer just for demonstration purposes. So let's go ahead and make a new file, and we'll call it demo.php. And we're just going to copy our app file, put it in here, demo, and we'll just call it demo is the class name. And then we want to include our blade demo file, and this is in the partials demo blade demo location. So partials demo.blade demo. And then we're just going to call this one fruits. That's going to be our data. And then we are going to call we'll call this get fruits. And then in this case, our data, we just had our array of fruits, and we can just return our data like this. And we want to rename this, of course. So now we save that like this. And then if we go back up here, we can actually get rid of this. And then if we call this for each fruits as fruit, and then we of course need to change this to fruit, and we will just get rid of the if statement to make it easier to work with real quick. If we save that and reload the page, looks like we have a error here actually. So we should be including it. So what went wrong with our controller? If we go here, we've got fruits. Yeah, okay, that's what's wrong. Yeah, we put a period instead of a dash. So if we do that and save and refresh, now we have our fruits showing up here, and you can see that we have our data. Our data lives in this demo class composer. We are loading it only for this blade demo file. We are getting the fruits. This get fruits method returns banana and strawberry in an array. We're calling it fruits here. And then in blade demo.blade.php, we can access that through a loop. So that is how you can pass data to a blade view using a composer. And you could also include, this is an array here, so you can include another, say we had a blade demo secondary file. You could include more than one item in there as well, but we just have the one, so I will just leave it like that. But that is how you can get your data ahead of time and then pass it to a blade view, which is either your template or something your template includes. Like if you wanted to have something that gets the latest 3 blog posts, and you had a partial that you included in multiple templates to get the latest 3 blog posts, you could do that through a composer. And you can even do something like page title. And like I said, this works. Get page title. This works as if you're in the loop. So we could do, actually, I think there's something that maybe already uses that variable name. We'll call it page title demo. Get page title. Then we'll call this get page title. And then we'll return get the title. So now, if we get the page title, we have this page title demo. And just to prove to you that it works as if you are in the loop, you can do this. And of course, need our $sign. And then if we refresh, down here, we have our page title. So you can see that's how you fetch data with a composer, and you're also within the loop, so you can do things like get the title, get the ID, and pass it to your template so you're not having to get that data directly in your template or get it multiple times and things like that. So the last thing I want to go over is more of an advanced topic, and that is how do you use this blade syntax somewhere other than within Sage 10. Like for instance, if you have a custom plugin and you want to include blade from your Sage 10 theme inside of a custom plugin, how can you do that? Or if you're like me and you're loading ACF blocks from a non-standard location, how can you manually include the blade for those blocks? Well, I'm going to show you. So in your theme, there is this config directory, or at least in mine there is. This is more of a feature of Acorn than it is of Sage 10. And I'm going to put a link in the description if I can find where the Roots people go over this topic, a link to where you can get this config file, because I believe by default this config folder under your theme is not actually going to exist. This is going to be something you're going to have to create. But once you create it, and if you copy the view file that's linked in the description, you'll get a file that looks something like this. And most of this stuff you're not going to touch, like namespaces, directives, things like that. But what is important is this paths variable. So by default, you're just going to get, I think it comes with this resources views and this resources path. And I've added a few in here. So this get theme file path resources blocks and get parent theme file path resources blocks, these were ones that I added because I wanted to have in my theme a resources folder and then blocks and then custom ACF blocks. But you could also get the plugin directory. Like I've included here the WordPress plugin directory. So if I want to make a plugin that works with Blade, it will look in the plugin directory for any plugins that are using Blade. And it's just important to note that when you are working with Blade in a different path, the root of where you start is the path that it is executing under. So if I am adding a custom block, my root path is the blocks folder. So to take a look at how I'm using Blade in my custom blocks, let's take a look at one of them. We'll just load this up, this About Me block, which is one that I built that shows some information about me. And how I am loading Blade is through the use of this view function here. And you can see I'm just echoing it out, and I'm doing view, and then this is the path to the block relative to the directory you specified in your paths of where the Blade files can be located. So this is, where am I looking for my Blade files? I'm in the blocks folder, which is the path that I specified in my paths. So I need to go to the About Me block and then views, and then this is my Blade file down here, about me block.blade.php. And it's very similar to the includes when you're including in a Blade file, except for instead of dots, you do need to put slashes. And then data, this is all of the data that you want to pass to your Blade view. So I've got this array up here that gets a whole bunch of ACF custom field data and massages it. And then we want to just pass that to our Blade view. And then we just call render on it. And that will load our ACF block. And this allows me to add ACF blocks inside of the WordPress block editor that use Blade. And you can see if we take a look at the About Me block, we are using the Blade syntax for everything. We've got if statements. We've got, our sections where we're adding custom IDs. We're getting our content. We're doing all sorts of Blade things in here. And it really makes for a cleaner template than having PHP opening, closing statements in there, which goes back to the benefits of why Blade is cool. But that is how you can load a Blade file in a location that is different than just your theme. So one thing I've toyed around with is, should I make a custom plugin where I include all of my blocks for a new theme build? I haven't gone that route yet, but if I did want to go that way, I'd have to include Blade in my plugin somehow, and I would do that by using the Blade from the Sage 10 theme. So that was my video going over how to use Blade in Sage 10 with WordPress. Thank you to the following commenter who suggested that I make a video on this. I'm going to show your info up on the screen, so thank you. If there's something else Sage 10 related or WordPress related that you want me to take a deep dive into, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I don't make videos very often, but when I do, I love to hear suggestions from you guys as to what I should make. If you want to see more Sage 10 content like this, let me know. I've been thinking, what other Sage 10 videos should I make? Maybe I'll make one about how to deploy a site live with Sage 10. If that's something you're interested in, leave a comment. And if you're working with Sage 10 and you still have questions, go ahead and leave it in the comment section. And I also am available for developer mentorship. If you want to have a one-on-one with me and talk about Sage or WordPress or Git or anything like that, I am more than happy to get on a call with you. I do free consultations, and then I charge $30 for 30 minutes for ongoing mentorships. I recently helped a developer named Josiah start his WordPress freelancing. I was able to help him get his first WordPress site online for a client. So if you're starting out with WordPress or Sage or just want somebody to bounce ideas off of, I'm available, like I said, for a free consultation and then ongoing membership. And that's going to be up on the screen right now. And if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give it a like and give it a subscribe. I will be putting out more videos sporadically, when I have the time. But I think if you like this video, you will like those videos. And, check me out on the internet at yourrightwebsite.com. Go to my blog, which is in the description, and I've got more Sage 10 tutorials and things like that on the blog, including another one that dives a little bit deeper into composers. Thanks again for watching this video, and hope you learned something. Bye.